Welcome to the Joy Work Show, the podcast that goes beyond the surface of business right to the heart to explore the real joy and the stories behind success. Not just the moments of celebration, but the challenges that paved the way for them. Hiya, I'm Diane, and here we know that joy isn't just about the good times. Often the greatest joy comes right after the greatest challenge. And today I have a truly special guest joining me. Someone who has helped thousands of women around the world rewrite their money stories and step into abundance with ease. You've probably heard her name before. Best-selling author, money mentor, and the queen of helping women release their money blocks, Denise Duffield-Thomas. In this episode, we are getting right into the joy of money, how your beliefs about wealth are shaped, why charging what you're worth matters, and the practical steps you can take to welcome more abundance into your life and business. This is a conversation about money, mindset, self-worth, and joy. And I promise you, you're going to walk away with insights you can use straight away today. But as always, it's so much better to hear from the guests themselves. So let's go. Hi Denise, and welcome to the Joy Work Show. I am over the moon that you are here. I have watched you from afar and I am overjoyed to have you here on the podcast. But for people who may not know you, or for people who are already fans there, tell us who you are, what you do, and how you got here.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Diane. It's so nice to see you and to be able to talk about joy with you.
Wonderful.
So, gosh, again, you said you can go back as far as I want, but it's like
Yes.
so hard to know. So, I am a money mindset mentor, and that means that I help people, mostly entrepreneurs, but not necessarily creatives as well, to really deal with their inner gremlins around money, all of the fears and worries that we have, all the insecurities that come up, especially when we have to ask for money. And for me, that has a really personal background because I grew up in the east coast of Australia. I don't know if you've ever watched Home and Away. Watch Home and
Yes,
Away.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the place that I grew up was very much like Home and Away. So it was on the beach, the surf club, just that beach kind of life, which is very lovely to grow up in Australia because even if you don't have a lot of money, it feels like you have so much abundance
Yes.
anyway,
Yeah.
especially with the warm weather, right?
And it definitely seemed like that when we were watching Home and Away anyway.
It does feel like that. And so I grew up, my mum was really young when she had me. She was 17 and she really struggled financially our whole life. And that meant that she was often in positions that she didn't want to be, either with a job that she hated, a boss that she hated, or in relationships as well. And so from a really young age, my mum, my aunties, my grandmother, who were all powerless in their life, would always say to me, make your own money, make your own money. And it was drummed into me so much as a kid, not just what they said, but also what I could observe as a kid is that these women had very little power in their lives because of money and the lack of money. And so I had this burning desire from a young age to make my own and to do my own thing. And of course, I grew up, in the 80s and 90s where there was no real examples of what it would be like to have your own business.
No.
So for me, I thought, okay, I'm going to be a writer, I'm going to be a secretary, I'm going to work in an office. And I just wanted that freedom and independence. And as I started my own business, I realized how tricky some of these conversations are about money, asking for it, setting your prices, feeling confident in yourself. And so when I became a life coach, I realized very quickly that I wanted to work with entrepreneurs. And then after working with so many entrepreneurs, I realized, wow, we all have this thing in common, especially women, that we want to have freedom, we want to have independence, but yet there's something inside us that makes it really tricky to ask for money.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be upbringing, it can be culture, it can be the patriarchy, there's a lot of things. But I really wanted to dedicate myself with helping other women to be able to do really simple things sometimes, ask for money. have conversations about money so we can empower ourselves financially. So that's kind of my story. And then I really thought, though, when I did my first money boot camp, I was like, okay, I've done it once. That's great. And I'm still running that program 13 years later, and we've had 10,000 people go through that program. And
It's
I've got books
amazing.
and other courses. So I've been able to really make like that mission for me as that little girl into something that can really help people around the world.
Hmm.
And then I get invited on beautiful podcasts like with you.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And it's so interesting with the conversation with money, because I always thought I was quite confident with money, and I always thought that it wasn't really an issue when people spoke about money mindset. So I've been in business now for 2 years. When people first started talking about money mindset in business, and it's probably the only time that people really have. So my eyes have kind of been really opened up to it. And if people said to me, "Oh, your money mindset," in my business, my money mindset is great. From day one, I kept figures. I tracked my income in my business. I know that's something that you're really, really
Yeah.
focused in on. But I wasn't so good in my personal life. But because I
Mm.
thought I was good in business, I thought that was going to be enough. And it wasn't till I sat with somebody and they went and they asked me talked about my money story and things like that. And then all of a sudden, like, it was like peeling back these layers. And I was just like, okay, maybe because I can do my business figures doesn't quite mean that my money mindset is all I think it is. And it was much more complicated and much more about. So even like reading your books and thinking about the money tracking, and what changed when I read your book and thinking about the money tracking was I was really good at it in the business, but what about in my personal life? What about every, you know, even the minute detail of what's coming in. When you get a voucher, when you get something for free, so that abundance mindset wasn't quite there, and I wasn't fully appreciating the money mindset. And I would say it's only this year that I've really started to kind of do that work and look at that work. Can you tell us a little bit about that, how you got to there, how and what that might look like, from the abundance, the manifestation, that type of edge that
Yes,
you do?
you mentioned kind of the layers, and I like to think of this work as excavation work because there are layers and layers and layers of this stuff, and it never ends, which sounds really scary and like hard work, right? But I like to really come at this work with curiosity because there's always something we can learn about ourselves, especially when you're in community with other women who are talking about money. You start to really notice these nuances around, you might have an imposed upper limit around how much you can earn in a job in general or an industry, but you also might have one about how much you're allowed to earn in a month versus in a week versus in a day. And when you start to feel restricted in any way, or you start to feel that kind of invisible glass ceiling, which I think people know what that feels like when you feel a
Yeah.
bit frustrated and you think, oh, I can't get through. It's really interesting to look at it every single time because sometimes it's the same block that will follow you throughout your career. Sometimes it will be a slightly different one. So let me give you an example. A lot of the time at the start of someone's business or career, they'll start to come up really fundamental blocks about what you're allowed to do for money,
Yes.
right? What is hard work, for example? So you might have this kind of unspoken agreement in your family that everyone goes to college and does a particular job. So then if you want to go into something that's slightly different, you might start to come across these feelings of like, hang on, this isn't right. And it will be so unconscious, but it will filter into procrastination, giving discounts, like all of these little things that are quite unconscious. You might also have a block around how easy or hard it has to be to earn money. And I actually think that this happens a lot for people who are kind of my age. So I'm mid 40s. I grew up without the internet, and work for me was you go somewhere, you do an hour's worth of work, you get an hour's worth of pay. And that's how it's been for most people, right? And so suddenly then when you think, I can get paid for an ebook that I've already created, for a course. It just doesn't the math doesn't math. And so again, people start to unconsciously sabotage themselves. You might have an idea about what kind of work is legitimate. I've even heard people say, "Yeah, well, PayPal's not real money." So almost like we've got these little compartmentalizations about what's real and what's not real when it comes to work. I remember the first speaking gig that I ever got, and I was with my mum. We were shopping, and I got a call, and someone said, "Oh, I saw on your website you do speaking. We need a motivational speaker." And it was a government away day. And I just think, oh my God, they must have thought I was just like, anyway. And she said, "What's your speaking fee?" And I said, "What's your budget?" She said, "It's $500. And I said, "What a coincidence. That's my speaker's fee." So I got off the phone to my mum and I said, "Oh my God, someone just booked me for a speaking thing. 45 minutes, it's $500. And my mum said, "Wow, that's my whole week's salary at the nursing home." And at that time, she was doing like assistant work at a nursing home where, it's emptying bedpans and making beds and delivering food. And in that moment, I felt like a piece of crap.
Yeah.
And she wasn't shaming me, but just the way that she said it was just like, oh my God, it felt really inappropriate.
Yeah.
It felt really disrespectful. And so that's a little nugget that you can find. And sometimes if you're not aware of these patterns or this work, you might see things like that, or someone else shaming you, or a client saying it's too expensive, and people will give up their whole business on that. They'll go, "It's too awkward. I'm a terrible person. This is not going to work." And they let it go. What you can do though, when you start to just recognize that money mindset is a thing, you find that and you go, "Wow, that's so interesting. No wonder I felt this way." Of course, anyone would feel that. And yet I'm still going to move forward anyway. So that's just part of that excavation work. When I said though, it's the same block that could come up again and again, I think most of us have some sort of almost like inner wound that will follow us no matter how much money we make. And mine is, I want people to like me. I want people to think, "Oh, there's that Denise girl. She's so down to earth and so nice." And so every time I've hit kind of a new upper limit, I'll think, "But people won't like me anymore if I make more money." I've thought that of when I first made my first $1,000, and I still feel that way sometimes after making $32 million in my business. And I just think we have to just be able to recognize those, have the tools to be able to deal with them, and also have an enormous amount of compassion for ourselves that most of us have not had very many healthy examples of how to talk about money, how to deal with money, how to make it, how to spend it, how to save it. And it's quite new for women.
It's massively new, and it's something that I've been having lots of conversations recently. And the one conversation is, why is it not taught in schools? Why is it not taught in schools? Even from a point of view of, why is entrepreneurship not taught? Why is your tax season, credit cards, and all the things that can unravel you at a young age, and you can make some
Yeah.
really big mistakes. I'm sure we all did.
Yes.
Made all those mistakes. So, but why wasn't that taught? Because it's just information. And if you're given that information, then, you're kind of forewarned. And I'm not saying you won't still make the mistakes, of course you will, but then you'll remember, oh, this is how I could get out of it, or this is how, or there's the warnings, or, and it's strange to me that it's so not taught. And it's so interesting when it comes to women, because like your story, my mum always said to me, earn your own money, have your own way, and since having my children and starting my business, she was like, "I'm so delighted, because you still need your own thing and you still need to." And it's something that I didn't do. And it was always that thing as well. It was like, she always had her own account, separate to the joint account for the family and everything else. But in those days, it was kind of like a runaway fund. It was kind of
Yes.
like the only way that you could get out was to have this fund. And I don't think it's moved on massively from there. And it's because, like you said, patriarchy, the women take on most of the household and the children, and it's still a lot through choice as well, but it's still just unpacking that thing of, I am a woman and I deserve to earn money, I deserve to talk about money, I deserve to ask for money, and it is that kind of shamed from the boys club that you're not good enough and you're not part of this. Yes, you might do the same job, but you just need to stay over there, and we're going to do the deals over here whilst we drink whiskey and play golf. And it hasn't moved on that much. And unfortunately, it's going to take women to change it by just showing up and doing it, by doing the work, by working on the money mindset. And obviously, with the amount of students you've even had through the money boot camp, it must be something you see happening.
It is, absolutely. And also the ripple effect of this, right, is because when one woman talks about money and someone else hears, it just sparks something different. So I think this is really encouraging for everyone to hear is you don't have to teach money mindset to be able to still spread this positivity about money and to normalize success, normalize talking about money. I was even listening to a podcast yesterday and Olivia Colman, the actress, was on it. And she said that she took on a job, I can't remember which one it was, The Crown, when she played the Queen. And she said, because I had an enormous tax bill that just came in. And I was like, yep, I'll do it. Perfect timing. And I just thought, wow, not many people talk about things like that in just such a normal way. And this is what starts to shift and change conversations. And even in our household, from a very early age, most of my kids, I think I had my business the whole time, but my husband worked for me when we had our second kid. So they've always seen us work at home. And George, my middle son, who's 9 now, when he was about 5, he sort of said to me, he goes, daddies can be leaders too, And I was like, looked at him because I thought, oh my God, you have no idea. Like you've not been out into the world. You've gone to daycare, which is run by women, and you've seen our household where clearly the energy dynamic is that I am the boss in so many ways. And he was just like, daddies can be leaders too. And he was like trying to stand up for his dad of like, and I just thought, wow, this is so interesting of like what you see becomes your reality. And for so many of us, because we just did not see, yes, we might have seen our mothers and grandmothers be the bosses of the household energetically, but not really. You can sense the power dynamic that's under that, even if you don't know what money is. And that's what my son he knew that the power dynamic was shifted in my favor, right? But the indoctrination is so strong. So even after my business made well over a couple of $1 million, we went to see a financial advisor to talk about investing. And I can't remember, maybe my third baby, I was sitting there, breastfeeding. And I thought, I'll let the men talk about money and I'll go and, like change the baby in the other room. And it was just such an involuntary thought because again, what you said of we've been shown, the men go and talk about money over whiskey and the women kind of somewhere else. And even in that moment, I just went, oh my God, we have this money because of my business. Like what? And I know that's not an uncommon thing. Even sometimes when women do make more money, sometimes they still do defer to their husband, even if they have no other qualification either for it. We're just kind of indoctrinated in that way. And it's not about, shifting the power dynamic. So then we're the horrible power hungry assholes, but it's just showing that we're allowed to be in the conversation. And what like Michelle Obama has said, she's like, I've been at the most powerful tables and they don't know anything that we don't know. It's just that's what we've kind of been taught is that maybe they're smarter or more capable. And also if you have any like inner wounding around that, I'm not good at math. I've got dyscalculia. So I had this wounding from a very young age that I'm not good with numbers. And I made that mean that I'm not good with money because of some of those early mistakes that I made as well. Because I didn't know how to have a credit card. I didn't know how to save money, but I made that mean for a long time. I'm really bad with money, but also money's not for me.
Yes.
And that's the conversation we have to change. It's for us. We're allowed to talk about money, just like for generations and generations, our mothers and grandmothers would talk about everything with their friends.
Yes.
Nothing was off topic and nothing was taboo, but we still felt like money was one of those things that maybe we weren't allowed to publicly show our knowledge and power of. But have those conversations with your besties, with your girlfriends about what are we charging? How do we deal with a difficult client? How do we have a conversation when someone owes us money? And we're good at sharing those tips with each other. So let's do it with money.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And it's those, and community's becoming really, really important, particularly in the online space. And I think it is truly because, one, because of COVID and people realize what it was to be without and, wanting that back. But also because when we were growing up, we lived in communities. We probably had relatives that weren't our immediate family that lived not so far away. I grew up with cousins that I could walk and see and things like that, and grandparents. And we're not like that now. We're all so spread out. We move for businesses, for work, for choice, for life. The world is literally at our fingertips. So it's creating these communities, and it's becoming so important to have these communities, and particularly in business when we're in the online space and we're solopreneurs, and we still want to have the conversations around the water cooler and things like that. But it's, why are we not having these conversations about money? Why are we still shying away from what I want to earn, what I want to charge? Because it's that belief, isn't it? It's building that belief of like, no, I do deserve to charge that. I am that this is what you're going to pay me to do that. And unfortunately, I see women shy away from it and keeping themselves small and keeping their prices small. So how do you help people unpack that? What would be your kind of first port
Yeah.
of call to say to somebody, right, where are we at?
It's very multi-layered work, as you can imagine. I've had some people who've been in my course from the very start, 13 years ago, and I think we're still finding nuances. And I teach this work every day and I still find nuances around it. So where we start though, because it can feel very overwhelming, is I get people to do two exercises. One is to rank everything in their life according to if it's economy, premium economy, business class, first class. And we start to break it down into very granular things. So it can be anything from your underwear to your bed sheets to your key ring. Because what we're trying to do is look for commonalities, symbolism, stories about your deservingness. Because it's a very easy, practical exercise to do, but it can really start to discover some key things about what you believe you're allowed to have and what the kind of flavor of your life is. A lot of us think that the lottery win is going to be the thing that can save us and turn us into this wealthy person. But sometimes it's the accumulation of all those little choices about what you're really allowed to receive and what you're really allowed to have. And it starts to show up this belief that a lot of us have that suddenly one day we're just going to flip into this completely different person.
Yeah,
And
right.
there's you as you are, flawed and horrible and whatever. And then there's this perfect version of you that's deserving of the money. And we're trying to merge those two of you together to realize it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you feel undeserving on the inside, you always will.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes to know how to change that deservingness. So I always like to come at it from a very practical point of view of going, are you always getting the mug that's chipped?
Yes.
And you might think, who cares? But it's not. That could be accumulation of generations of women in your family who have always put themselves last. And that is embedded into you. So where can you upgrade little things in your life to give yourself permission to have more? And you might think, how does choosing the non-chipped mug translate into money? But it does, because you start to go, hang on, I'm worthy of having a client who treats me well. And it does translate into other things. So that's one of the exercises. And ongoing from that, you start to upgrade things and you realize that some things don't need to be upgraded forever and you find something else. But the other exercise we do, which can be a little trickier for some people, is to do an inventory of all of your money memories. And of course, I give a lot of prompts because some people go, I don't remember anything about money as a kid. And sometimes it takes a little bit of excavating over time to find those things. Other people, though, they'll go, yeah, this thing happened when I was a kid. I didn't think it meant anything at the time. But sometimes things happen to us at a young age and they become so indelibly marked in our brain that it changes everything we believe. So one thing could have happened that, like an example, someone stole money out of your piggy bank or one of your parents took money out of your piggy bank. And that has created this deep groove that says, I cannot trust other people. Or it's so funny how it goes different ways for different people. Some people then become hoarders of money. Other people go the opposite and go, what's the point of saving money? Someone's going to take it anyway, so I may as well spend it while I have it.
Yeah.
And you can have siblings who've grown up in the exact same money situation, but have decided very different things. So if your parents were really frugal, some of the kids will be frugal because all they know is that fear. They don't even know why they're afraid. And that could be generations back that someone experienced a famine or war and they've had to be very frugal, and that's carried down the generations. Other people grew up in a frugal household and they literally spend every penny that they make because they don't want to hold on to things. They want to let things go. And what we want to do with that inventory is find the patterns, find the stories, find the core memories, have compassion for ourselves around it, be able to talk about it and to process it, and either understand it or decide something different. And I think both of those two exercises can be literally ongoing work, which is why we come back to them again and again. But also, what I love about, especially with my community money bootcamp, is hearing other people's stories and other people's symbolism. It really does heal something in ourselves because of the way that women have always communicated. And I would say, when I say women, we've got like 95% women, we've got non-binary people, and we have a few men in there too who kind of lurk and go, oh, I know I'm not supposed to talk in here, but we love them. And I think just hearing other people's stories is so healing for ourselves because it's so easy to have compassion for other people. And you will hear a story and you go, well, no wonder you struggle to send an invoice out to your client. Anyone would. And then, of course, we can have compassion for ourselves and say, gosh, no wonder it's so hard for me to ask, a client who's defaulted to pay their bill, because it does not feel safe for me to do that. And it's amazing how quickly then things can change because we've realized money is just like anything else that we're allowed to share information on. And then you start to, like, this is what we naturally do as well, create systems, create stories, create new ways of being that can help us. And then it has such a positive ripple effect through our clients, through our peers, through our kids who, even if they don't see us do it, they feel it. And all of those things make a difference. And so it's one of those things where it's like, it's hard to see sometimes the changes with money mindset, right? Because it's all kind of under the surface. But again, you feel differently about money when you start to do this stuff, and you give yourself permission that it does not have to be perfect, because I've made so much money. I still make money mistakes all the time, but then you start to realize, well, that's just human and that's okay too.
Well, it's life, isn't it? We're going to continue, and as things change as well, and the way we invest to change, the way we run businesses change, it's just lovely to have. And it's that thing of thinking, well, I can make mistakes with money because I now know how to welcome it back into my life. And okay, can't make big mistakes, but it's still, everything is figure outable, and I can fix this because now I see the patterns, I understand the patterns, and I feel much more in control of it. Before doing that, it might be something that then spiraled completely out of control. Do you ever come across anybody who is just like, I'm just not that motivated by money?
Oh, yes, but I actually hear this a lot, right? Especially for people who are in healing professions.
Yes.
Because it's indoctrinated into them in their training, because some industries will say, I hope you're in this for the right reasons. I hope you don't think you're going to make money out of this. So this could be the arts, this can be healing professions, this can be health-related professions, this can be grief-related, it can be women's issues kind of things, it can be dance teachers have this too. So one of my favorite things now is to work with specific industries, because honestly, 80% of it is exactly the same work, but there's that 20% where they'll sort of go, but my industry is exempt from this, Denise. We really care about our clients in this industry. And I think that is the biggest thing, is that because women's work has seen, as free labor, the caring, the holding space, listening, solving problems, it was seen as women's work in so many ways, until a man goes into that profession. And then, of course, it's seen as legitimate. Yeah. And sorry, we're not bashing men here, of course, but it's just the way that the world has worked for a long time. So then it does feel weird then when you're in a healing profession that you probably would have done 300 years ago for free and people just bring you eggs. You're on the edge of the village. But it's one of those things that we just have to undo in our head of going, I can help people and make money. I can care very deeply about my clients and still have boundaries and still charge people. And that doesn't mean it's not a binary choice, right? Because occasionally I'll have someone who's so stubborn and they just go, but I really do care. But actually, after very quickly, people will go, oh, I'm allowed to do both. And actually, setting boundaries, being clear on what my pricing is, it actually is a very kind, caring thing to do for people. And the more that I protect my boundaries, the more that I, are clear on my value, actually, the more people I can help. And I'll give you a very clear example on this. I remember meeting someone at a conference and she was an intuitive healer. So she would have sessions with people on Zoom. Even back then, it was quite novel, right? And I said, oh, how many clients do you see in a week? And she was like, well, about 100. And I was like, because at the time I'd been doing coaching and I maxed out at 15 clients a week. I just energetically couldn't hold any more people. And I was just like, my God, how can you do that? And often what I'll see is that someone who has that very strong belief that I really care about people, I really care about my clients, I don't want to have filthy money attached to it, is that they get to a point where they have absolute burnout because there's only a certain amount of people that they can see in a week. Whereas if you have, beautiful money boundaries, you charge appropriately, you have win-win pricing for what you do, you can buy back some time and energy. And then what can you do with that? You can write a book. You can start a podcast, which, as you know, Diane, doesn't just happen by accident.
No,
it takes
it
a lot of
definitely
time and
doesn't.
energy.
Definitely doesn't.
And you're up very late to be able to talk to me in Australia. But it's hard to do that when you're burning yourself out and undercharging and over delivering. You can create opt-ins, you can create group programs, and all of those things help you help more people. So it's not selfish to charge appropriately what you do, because actually you can only help such a small amount of people if you're just basing it off your very undercharged energy. And also, I know I've done this myself, Diane, when you are undercharging and over delivering, I think that's when you attract the worst clients.
Yes.
Because you attract people who are never happy, never satisfied, because they're matching your energy of I'm not enough. It's never enough. I'm not helping enough. I'm not doing enough. I'm still overcharging. You're just attracting people who are this energetic match to it. And then they're the ones who'll take, not even say thank you. You're burning yourself to a crisp and your impact is so limited. So that's how I get people to see that, to say, wow, it's not selfish for me to charge appropriately. It's actually the highest use of my abilities here. And I'll be able to help so many more people. And when you get that in your head, it's not that thing of, I just want to make more money, because you'll never be that greedy person. You don't even have to worry about that, but you'll have to give yourself permission to not burn yourself to a crisp. And to sum all that up for people in a very handy little thing for them to remember is I serve, I deserve. I serve,
I love
I deserve. It has saved me so many times because I just thought, hang on, I am doing something good here. And so I deserve to receive in return, receive respect, money, thank you, gratitude in return, an abundant life for this work that I'm putting out into the world. And that really helps you to realize you have to inhale and exhale. It has to be that. Otherwise, it's so unsustainable. And then you can't help anyone.
And that's it. And I think, like you said, a lot of those professions, they see themselves as having a gift. So they don't think that that's then their purpose to share that gift. And they don't think they have to have that return because it's just their whole life's purpose to do that. But like you say, they can't have the impact. They can't touch as many people as they want to touch in their business because they're not making the money that they deserve to make. I think what people get wrong about money mindset, and I see it with my own clients and within my own membership, is that people think that, oh, I don't want to, I don't want to do the £10,000 a month. I don't want to be a millionaire. And that's absolutely fine. But they're working so hard at not being those things that they're not getting what they do want, whether it's £500 a month or £500,000 a month, it doesn't really matter. But they're so concentrated on, this is the type of person I don't want to be. They're not just concentrating on, this is who I do want to be, this is what I want to earn, this is what will transform my life. Working the hours I want to work, serving the clients I want to serve, and earning the money I want to earn. And I think there's still so many people are just keeping themselves small in the wrong ways because of that, because they're almost running away from something rather than running towards the right thing.
Absolutely. And when you're in that energy, not only do you attract those clients sometimes that are ungrateful, you'll actually attract a lot of people who are very critical of your business. And that's the hard thing, is that when you think you're being so generous, you'll get people emailing you saying, "How dare you charge anything for this?" Who aren't even clients. And it's because you've got those leaky holes inside yourself, and you've got no energetic shield to be able to help you. And I think that's why community is so important, because then you can just go, "Oh, okay, fine." It's cool. And actually, in our money bootcamp community, we'll say to people, as soon as you get your first hater, as soon as you get your first refund request, we want you to come in and celebrate that, because it's just a rite of passage.
Yeah.
Everyone will get it. I think on pricing too, this is a really interesting thing that I want everybody to understand, is that there is no such thing as a critic proof price. And that's what we're trying to aim for, right? We want to be able to get this magical price that everyone thinks is reasonable. Everyone's willing to pay. No one thinks we're a bad person for wanting to charge it. And everyone agrees that, it's the right thing to do. And you cannot find that, because even if you were charging £1 for something, someone will say, "How dare you?" And so you're not running your business for those people. You have to have your pricing. You have to be able to live with your pricing. And that's the hardest thing, I think, is that there's no formula. There's no magical price. You have to live with it. And that is different for everybody, which I really struggled with, because I thought, I'll crowdsource my pricing. I'll ask people what they think is reasonable. I will look at what my peers are charging. And you can't price based on that, because it is so energetic. And also the hard thing is that will change. It's not like your boss is going to go, "Okay, here's your annual price increase review." There's none of that when you've got your
When you're
own
doing it
business.
yourself. But
Yeah.
that's it. I think that so many people, and I think so many people think that if they set a price, then that's it forever. They can't change it. So they actually put too much thought into it. But it's just like, start with a price that feels good for you, that feels good value for your client, that is going to hit the income goals that you want to hit if you hit your sales goal, and then go from there. Don't think much
Yeah.
further past it than that, because you'll overcomplicate it and you'll end up. And I've had as many questions about things I've put out there for free and at a very low price, and almost people looking at me as if to, what is she trying to do by only charging that, or for offering something for free, particularly when I first started out. And I was just like, I just need people to get to know me, because I didn't even exist in the online space before I launched my business. And then for my high ticket stuff, I've had as many questions in between, but the people who do the high ticket stuff are the people that commit, stick to it, do the work, get through it, because they've made a commitment, they've made a choice, they've invested their time and their energy as much as their money. And that's what's, really, really important. But I don't think you can get the pricing right. I think you need to look at your offers and make sure the kind of ladder or the suite or the 360 of your offers is right. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I don't think there's always going to be somebody who's got an opinion on something about it.
Always.
Always. Well, as you know, this is the Joy Work Show, and I ask everybody 3 joy questions just to get to know what kind of joy you like, and just really get into that kind of what's kind of inspired you to kind of where you've got to. So the first one is the joy spotlight, a favorite thing that has shaped your life or work. And it can be anything.
Yes. So for me, I was a dancer growing up, and it was such a huge part of my life because I had a very chaotic upbringing. And what I love about dancing is that especially things like ballet, it is the same everywhere you go. And so it was really the solace for me. I recently on Facebook, one of my dream boards came up and it was a picture, of one of my dream boards from 15 years ago. There was a lot of ballet and dance on there, and for a long time I didn't dance because it's hard to do as an adult. And 2 years ago I found this adult ballet studio, and now I do like 10 classes a week, and I make ballet costumes, and it brings me so much joy. And I feel like a little kid again, just like going to dancing, and it's so much fun for me. And now I have adult money to buy stuff.
To buy
And
all of the ballet gear that you can.
it's very dangerous. Every day something arrives, Mark's like, "What's this for?" And I was like, "It's for a costume. Don't even worry about it." And that's also I make my Halloween costumes now, and I have so much joy in bringing something to life. Let me just show you. This is the sleeves that I made yesterday for the new tutu that I'm working on. It's very
Amazing.
Yes, it's very beautiful. And yeah, I've got my tutu on my dressmaker's dummy there. And I think, like a lot of entrepreneurs, I think I swung a little bit too far into workaholism for a little
Yeah.
bit. And actually, the thing that stopped me, I was at a conference and in the UK, and people was coming up to me and saying, "Thank you so much for coming here." And I kept on saying, "My pleasure, my pleasure, my pleasure." And I said it so many times, I was like, "Oh, there's a lesson in this for me." And I was like, you can enjoy your business and love your business, but actually this shouldn't be my only pleasure in life. And it
Mhm.
was for a little bit because I wanted to help people so much. And I fell into that same pattern. This is the thing, right? You'll have the same patterns where I go, I have to show up and serve, right? But I forgot
Mhm.
the I deserve bit. And I thought that the deservingness was just the money.
Yeah.
And I had to realize, oh no, I'm allowed to take that money and do things that bring me pleasure and joy in my real life as well, not just in my business life. And so that's when I've really given myself permission now to really truly live a beautiful creative life, not just a business life. Yeah,
And
tricky.
have you found that, because I think the thing for entrepreneurs is that they are scared to step away because they believe the minute that they step away, the cogs stop. And I think it's great to see somebody that, because it doesn't look like your business has suffered from
Well,
you.
it has, but in a deliberate way. So I'm happy to share numbers too. So the height of our business was, I can't remember if it was 5.5 or something like a million a year. And I remember thinking, oh, I want to make 10 million next year. And I just thought, because I'd kind of doubled so many times, and I just sort of went, for why? And I like to ask myself that question rather than for what, for why. And I realized I was like, I've kind of hit a lot of the dreams that I had. I built a big house. I bought a second property. I've invested in tons of things. And I was like, oh, I've done that. And it wasn't what I want now. And so what I realized that I really wanted was a more peaceful life. So as part of that, I had to take a very long sabbatical. Well, not very long. It was 4 months overseas in the UK, away from the day to day. And then when I came back, I really shifted a lot of things in my business because I wasn't necessarily motivated for the numbers. I still was to help people, but I realized that I did want to downsize a lot of my commitments to honor this phase of life. And so for me, that was perimenopause, honoring that
Yeah.
journey, honoring the fact that I have got 3 kids now who need me in a different way than they did when they were smaller, and that I wanted to be able to go to ballet every day. So instead of making 5 million, our business probably makes about a million, a million and a half. And I'm like, that's still a good problem to have.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about that because there was a little bit of an ego death in that for me as an entrepreneur, right? Of going, always growing, always succeeding. But then I was going, but who is that for?
Yeah.
Is
Is
that to
that
impress other people?
performance, isn't it? Where you think like, is this truly what I want? Or is it now a think of, I need to keep up, I need to keep the performance? And like you said, because when I stepped away from my career, and I stepped away after having two babies pretty quickly back to back, and I was just like, I don't know who. It was a 20 plus year career. And I was like, I don't know who I am without it. I had to relearn everything. And I'm grateful that I started the business older because I have made that space intentionally now. And yes, it probably means I've done things a lot slower and I'm having to make different decisions. And I probably am nowhere near the income that goals that I have, but I'm doing it with intentional because I want that sustainability. I want that I know what it's like to burn out because that's kind of what I was doing in my career
Mhm.
before I had children. But it's scary to make those decisions, but they're really important. And I remember with you, like with you saying your children need you differently. I launched my business when my youngest was 1. I remember somebody saying to me, "Why are you doing that when the babies are so young? I don't, why can't you wait a little?" And I was like, well, from everyone else I've seen have kids, there's not really a good time. And they're
True.
babies, and I can pick them up and they can come with me, and they're a little bit more pliable at the moment. Whereas once they start school and once they start having more complicated problems and looking for me in a crowd at their school performances and becoming
Yeah,
teenagers, I want to be there. Whereas right now, they're just happy that I feed them and wipe their bum. So, I
that's so
can't
true.
I can't see a better time, and I did feel that kind of now or never feeling. But I was like, there's no other time in a child's life that this is going to be, oh, this is a great idea to start a business now. Um,
It's so
but I
true.
think it's
I
so
did so
important.
much work with my breastfeeding pillow
Yes,
doubling as a laptop pillow. But I think this is the great question, Diane, is that we are learning as we're going and redefining what wealth looks like, because in a very patriarchal system, wealth looks like constant growth.
yes,
And it doesn't make sense in that system for me to go, oh, I'm going to step back because the growth for growth's sake doesn't fulfill me as a person. And so actually abundance for me looks like being able to make dance costumes and go to dancing and go and pick up my kids. And that expansion for me is happening in different ways than we've been taught that success looks like. And again, that ego death for me, I was like, oh, my business is in decline. That's what I was like, because that's the model that I learned
yeah,
at
yeah.
school. It's like
If it's
your
not
business
going like
you're in the
that,
growth phase. Right. And it's like, oh, it's in decline. And I was like, oh my God, that feels so horrible. And then I was like, but I'm consciously choosing this and it feels really fulfilling. And I think that's the conversation that we can say together as women is, yes, of course, the first part is that we have to get over our fear of charging and we have to kind of almost bring up our masculinity a little bit more, but to give ourselves permission to do it in the way that it feels so good for us. And so then our kids can learn that much quicker. They
yes,
don't have to do the
absolutely,
overcorrection because that's what
absolutely,
a lot of us are doing, the overcorrecting. And of course, now I think what I, because I'll say to people, who are in their hustle mode, I'm like, do you have to hustle that much? Because I've kind of come full circle where I've gone, okay, I sold my big house and I've moved to the burbs and I'm richer in net worth, but not necessarily some of those outward trappings of success that I thought I wanted. So I'll say to people, well, just shortcut the big house bit and just go straight to, paying off your mortgage. But I wouldn't have been happy. I wanted to try that. I wanted to try it. And I'm glad that I did. So I'm kind of cautious sometimes in saying to people, don't do the hustle or don't build your empire, because you won't know until you've done it if that works for you or not. So
yeah,
just do what you want to do.
exactly. That's it,
Yeah.
but I think it's that thing of constantly being honest with yourself of who you're doing it for and why you're doing it, and if those things are truly, truly what you want, then shoot for the moon, go for it. Know what that's gonna take, know the sacrifices it's gonna take to get there, and go for it. But also, it's okay to just say, "I just want to be able to take my family on 3 holidays a year." If I can make enough money to do that with my partner, with my family, and that's what we want to do, that's also enough. Because I think people are almost sometimes too scared to say that, because it's dream big, have this big vision. And I talk to my clients about that. I make them go as big, but I'm like, go big for you. Go big for what you
Yes.
want. Because I can't tell you what that is. I can't push you and keep pushing you and keep pushing you if it's not what you truly want,
Yes.
because they might say, well, yeah, it's okay for them, but I'm never going to work more than 20 hours a week. So if they say that to me, I'm like, okay, well, in 20 hours, what can we do? What can we create? And it's amazing what you can
Yeah.
when you're focused and you're charging
Exactly.
right
And get
and you're doing,
honest.
yeah,
Exactly. Get honest about what you're doing and what you're charging. Be intentional about it.
yeah,
And I think this is the part too, is that we're allowed to make mistakes.
Yes.
And you might go in a particular area in your business and realize it's not for you. That doesn't mean anything. And again, when we were talking right at the start, you mentioned something about making mistakes. And I think Richard Branson has closed so many businesses.
Businesses.
Right? And he's never considered a failure in business. He's considered a maverick, someone who's creative. And because I lived in the UK for so long, I saw some of those in real time, like Virgin Cola. I don't know if you ever remember that.
Yep.
And Virgin Brides. He had the
Yes.
whole bridal business and a million different things. And that is part of it, is that you can experiment, you can play, even play with your version of yourself as a wealthy person. What would a wealthy person do? Okay, let me try that. Does that fit? And I remember a couple of years into like starting to make money, I was like, well, I should wear high heels now because that's what wealthy women do. And I was like, this sucks. So now, like, I love wearing Skechers because I love the fake laces. So you don't have to, lace them up. And I remember I was at Heathrow and I'm in the queue for the line and there was all these old men wearing the same Skechers as me. And I was like, this is great. We don't have to bend down. Like, we can just put our feet in when we have to go through. And that's been the most fun thing for me, is to play what wealth means. And I've made so many mistakes in that, where I've gone, wow, I've overcorrected, or that didn't feel as good as I thought, or I'm glad I experienced that, but it's not for me. Like going to Center Parks. Oh my God, that was hilarious. With my husband's family, because I think we all just thought, wow, Center Parks is this amazing. And I got there and it was hell. I hated it so much. I was like, this is like a prison camp. Why are people doing this? And I was like, oh, that's so great, because I always had it in my mind, built it up as this thing, and it was not fun. And this is the great thing though, because we've all got these self-imposed, oh my God, I could do a whole episode on Center Parks. Oh my God, I'm traumatized by the lazy river.
I've done it once, but I do like Center Parks. I did have a good experience with tiny babies.
But I didn't know that you could get a room close. We were like 20 minutes away. And I was like, do they just expect us to tramp through the rain to get anywhere? I was like, what is happening? And the lazy river, where I was like, came out, I was traumatized. I was like, oh my God, this is so funny. But anyway, I think that is part of it, is playing like what is for me, what is not for me, where am I allowed to go, who am I allowed to be? And some of those things are built up in our mind.
Mm-hmm.
And you're allowed to try things. You're allowed to be a wealthy person who still goes charity shopping.
Yes.
You're allowed to wear jeans to the Ritz. That's the fun thing, I think, about playing with your identity and seeing what is truly for me, what would light me up, and what do I deserve, and just play around the edges of that. It's really interesting to do it.
Yeah, going back to the dance thing and talking a little bit about playing with your identity, there's a part in your Get Rich Lucky Bitch where you wrote a list of stuff that wasn't to do with money, but to do with like experiences or doing things. So is that like why you did the dance thing? Is that like just writing the things to kind of getting out your comfort zone, but not in the business sense? Is that the kind of reasoning behind that? I can't remember the exact phrase you put in the book, but
what's really important for me, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs will probably understand this, is that we need something for our brains to do. And so for me, I know I've got a very simple business. It's a very elegant business model. And my brain wanted to wreck it and overcomplicate it quite a few times.
yeah.
So I think it's important for us to have something for our brains to do. So I will do cross stitch. I make ugly cross stitch things because I know I need to direct my brain to something, because I go, don't wreck the business. The business is perfect, but you need to direct yourself to something. And so that's really important, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs, is what's business and what's real life, and what is, like you said too, about getting really focused. If you can only spend 20 hours, be really honest about what you're spending that time on, income producing activities, and let sometimes your creative life and your business be separate, or it's okay to combine them as well. But I think the thread throughout all of this, though, Diane, is it's permission, right? It's permission for yourself to try things, permission to earn from your talents, permission to try, to dream, to do something that maybe no one in your family's ever done. And throughout all of that, it's accepting yourself, loving and accepting yourself. And that's the only thing I want to teach my kids. I don't care if they make lots of money, but the thing that I really want them to remember is loving and accepting themselves, because then it
Yeah.
doesn't matter what they do.
Well, they'll do what they want then because they love and accept themselves. They'll do something that they love to do and that gives them purpose and pride and everything you just want, and live a happy and fulfilled life, which is kind of all you want for your kids, isn't it?
That's all you
That's kind
want.
of the important thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can
The
be
second
happy, rich or poor, right? So just choose what you want to do.
Well, that's it, and people are happy, and I think that's the really important thing. And I think even like I said, when clients come to me or even friends and say, "Oh, I want to do this, I want to do that," sometimes I have to remember to keep myself back because, and like you said about like doing the cross stitch, or if somebody's good at something, it's like, well, you could make money doing that. And I love it when people turn around and say, I don't want to make money out of doing it. I just like doing it. And all right, okay, I'll
My
stop.
This is exactly what happened yesterday. My brother came over for dinner and I was, finishing my ballet things, and he goes, "Wow, you could charge people for that." And I was like, "No, Josh, that's not a business that I want to do, because I would hate it. Imagine having a deadline to make someone's tutu." I'm like, "I don't know." And then I said to
Yeah.
him, "Do you realize how much work goes into craft?" Because he goes, "Oh, you could sell your cross stitch." And I said, "This shitty cross stitch, this took me like 100 hours. What do I charge for a cross stitch?" And I just think you don't have to monetize everything.
No,
It's
exactly.
okay to have some things just be joy and hobby, but be very clear on then, okay, well, then this is how I make my money. So then I have to focus accordingly, exactly what you said.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the second one is inspired by joy. So a book or mentor that has just kind of never left you and changed things for you a bit.
This is why I think it's so funny when people say at the end, I've got 3 rapid fire questions, because I'm like, we're going to go down some
We're going
sidebars
to go
for
on
every
Monday.
single question. um, so a book or something that brings me joy. Well, I think again, for me, that's so present for me at the moment is ballet. But I've realized the last couple of years, I don't really love reading business books at the moment, but I love reading autobiographies, especially the ones that we can usually read are famous people who have lived a very big life in a very short period of time, and so you
Yes.
can very much see money mistakes playing out in real life. And so many of us who think, oh God, I would never do that, we've just never had the money to make the same mistakes, and we absolutely would. And so I think we can just learn so much. And a good example, recently I read Rebel Wilson's book, Rebel Wilson, the
Yeah.
Australian actress. And it was just fascinating, just a few little nuggets about how, because she was a lawyer, and how she, negotiated her contracts for herself. And it was very inspiring. Again, the gift we give each other when we talk honestly and openly about money.
Hmm.
Mm. I also love listening to Amy Poehler's new podcast called A Good
Yeah.
Hang. She has the best guests. She's such a great interviewer. And I love hearing creative people just talk about their creative work. It's so inspiring. And again, it just gives us permission to do the same in our own lives.
Well, that's it, but it's so interesting. I remember hearing Rebel Wilson on a podcast. I don't know if it was a Diary of the CEO podcast, actually. I can't remember. But I remember her being on a podcast and her talking about her life and how multi-layered it was, and the business brain that she had when opportunities came her way. And it's so interesting. And like when you hear creatives having these conversations, but they've also got that business kind of wherewithal to make the good decisions, and you just watch them and you think you're possibly one of the most powerful people ever because you've got that creative amazingness that you are going to dedicate your life to, but you have this nous to make sure that it's done right, that you build a business, that you build a legacy. And because you see so many creatives get taken advantage of in
Absolutely.
media and things like that. So it blows me away when you see a full creative plus this business clout. It's something special, I think, when you can
It
see that.
really is. And the next book I'm going to read is Tina Knowles's book, so Beyonce's mum.
Yes.
Her book is called Matriarch. I actually got it for Mother's Day a couple of months back, and that's going to be my next book because, again, she must just have such an amazing creative brain to have, fostered this environment for creatives like Beyonce and Solange to
Yes.
thrive. I just learned so much from those little nuggets, especially I see sometimes people criticize younger people for writing autobiographies, and I'm like, but it's so much more immediate for them. I know if I wrote a book in my 80s, I would sanitize a lot of mistakes
Yeah.
that I've made, and
Exactly.
I would have forgotten most of them. So I
Exactly.
love when people at a younger age give us the gift of, what's going on in their life. Another one, he's not so well known in the UK as much, but in Europe, Keenan Jackson, who's on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, yeah.
I read his book recently, and he's very honest. He made a lot of money because he was a child actor early on, and then he spent it all and went bankrupt.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my God, what a gift."
Mhm.
And so the first couple of years of him as a grown up making money, he had like a very tiny budget. He was had to pay back all this money, and I'm like, what a gift that he could share that with us so then we can learn that lesson.
Yeah.
And again, this is the gift we have, right, of being able to share our mistakes, our challenges together honestly and openly, because you never know who that's going to save, or just to help people have compassion for themselves too.
Yeah, it's the power of stories, isn't it? And sharing stories and sharing experiences that it does go, well, there's whole businesses built on it, and it's something that everybody
Yeah.
loves and everybody buys into, whether it's books or movies or podcasts or speakers or, we all love, or down the pub talking with friends. That's where those stories and lives are kind of built and talked about and experienced and shared for years, really, when you think
Absolutely.
about it.
And sorry, another book that I bought at the airport last week was Elizabeth Gilbert's new book. And she's doing a lot of press at the moment. And I've seen a lot of criticism about, she's very honest about when her partner was dying, she spent a lot of money to try and make her final days as whatever
Yeah.
she wanted, including buying her drugs and all this stuff. And I've seen so many people criticize that as, oh, it's so narcissistic talking about her life. And I can't believe she's so privileged that she could do that. And again, I think what a gift, because most of us, if we had a ton of money and someone was
We would
dying,
give
we don't know
anything.
how. We absolutely would. And it's brave for people to share those really ugly stories, because so many of us would probably make similar mistakes. I think autobiographies are just such a beautiful way to
Absolutely.
see money stories and money lessons.
Because like you say, there's in every story. You won't find a story that there isn't a money story in there somewhere.
No.
Okay.
Another one, sorry. See, I
Okay,
told
on
you
you go.
sidebars. Elton John's book, where he talks about how, he had this shopping addiction and he would spend so much money on clothes and, flowers and jewelry and gifts. And he was trying to like fill that hole of being a little kid that, that wants to be loved. And that is so, you might not have millions of dollars to waste on flowers, but who of us hasn't made decisions to try and to fill that hole inside us, whether from food or from sex or from bad relationships? And I just think if we can see the humanity in other people, we can appreciate the humanity in ourselves and give ourselves permission to do this money thing imperfectly, because we will absolutely make mistakes with it. So yeah.
But it's like, it's making the mistakes, it's failing and getting back up again. We spoke about Richard Branson, and it was really interesting we spoke about Richard Branson because when you were saying about the Virgin Cola and the Virgin Brides and everything that everybody says about your brand, if you're going to do something new, like, oh, don't do it under a successful brand. He just called everything Virgin. Didn't matter what it was. It was Virgin Money, it was Virgin Aeroplanes, it was Virgin Rockets now. But he doesn't worry. He's like, okay, that one failed. Right, we move on. What else are we going to do? But he never worried about, oh, don't do it in this brand. Don't damage the brand. Don't do this. And it never did. Everything else that was successful still thrived. And I think you've got a lot to learn, that we can just fail, get back up again. And it's, when you talk about who does that successful person look like? What does that successful person do? And the successful person just continues. Just goes like, yeah, well,
Yeah,
that didn't work out. Thanks for listening to me. I'm now going to be talking about this because this is what I'm moving on to next, because that's
exactly.
how we do it. So the last question is the joy killer, the thing that you would like to remove from the world.
Well, greed. Yeah, that's what's really it's killing so many things. So many wars are fought over power and greed, and it's very sad, and I think it's so hard for us sometimes as people who we just want to do good in the world, and it can be really hard to think, well, who am I to live this abundant life when there's so many bad things happening in the world? It's such a hard thing to hold, I think, for so many of us, especially for women, or if you're a mother or just a kind person in the world. We just go, well, how do these two things coexist, that I live this beautiful life and someone else is really in war or famine or struggle? It's so unfair. And I still don't always know how to hold those two things, right? Because it sounds callous to say, well, how can you help that person if you're in struggle yourself? It sounds glib, it sounds privileged, and it absolutely is. And also, you not living your life, that doesn't actually, it's not like your unrealized potential then gets magically sent to someone
Yeah.
else,
Uh-huh.
to
Exactly.
save them. So all we can do is to, be able to look ourselves in the mirror. Am I a good person? Am I using my gifts for good in the world? Am I using my abundance for good in the world? And but that's what I would really like to get rid of, is that unrelenting greed that is just
Well,
really
it's
harming
just
so
a
many
fuel,
things.
isn't it? It's just a fuel for the wrong things, that's
Yeah.
power, it's money, it's control, and it's ugly, and it's really interesting because obviously we've spoke a lot about money. Your books are about money, and it's so interesting to hear somebody that knows they deserve money, has earned a lot of money, also say that, greed can be the thing, because I think that we've talked about people in the wellness space, that they would think it was too greedy to be paid what they're owed. And, that word comes up a lot, but it's just a fuel for bad. It's fuel for bad. And I think it's people understanding that because you want to earn money, because you can have an abundant life and you deserve an abundant life, it doesn't mean
Mm.
that you are a bad person, or that you can't help, or you can't look at things going on in the world and say, well, what can I do? Because actually, the more abundant you are, the more impact you can have, the more help that you can give, the more you can educate yourself and learn about these things, so you can actually make an educated decision to help, because it's not an easy thing to do. Even if you're thinking about giving money to charity, it's not an easy decision to make, because there's always that, well, who do I trust and where do I send it, and does it actually get to where I want it to go? And there's no easy answer, but if you are in a privileged position, you can educate and you can help in the right way. And
Yeah.
hopefully, you can also, in your
Yeah.
own little home, bring your family up to be the change that we kind of want to see, because it all starts
Yes.
here in the walls.
I think the lesson in that too is enoughness. How much do I want to make? What is enough? But even as you said too, with the charity, is that can feel out of balance too, and people feel guilty no matter how much they give. What is enoughness around that? What is enoughness around the amount that I work? And that's been the really hardest thing for me, I think, is to find that balance, and to, because you, especially as an entrepreneur, you can always do more.
Yeah,
You could always market more, you could always put more effort in, and that's the lesson of like, "Oh, okay, I am enough, I am enough." I think that's the question for the ages for all of us, is to say, "I
absolutely.
am enough, and I am doing good in the world, I serve, I deserve," and knowing that you don't have to do any of it perfectly.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So if people want to come and find you, Denise, and find all about you, where do they come?
Well, thank you for your generosity in having me on, because obviously podcasts are a great way for me to get to know new people. And so I encourage everyone to come and follow me on Instagram. That's where I hang out most on the internet. I'm on Facebook and Twitter and stuff too, but Instagram's probably the most. So my handle there is at Denise DT. Obviously, come and find the video that Diane have put on, and you can comment and let us know what your main thing is. My website's denisedt.com, so easy to find. And then I would say too, if you are curious about, do I have money blocks? What are my money blocks? A good place to start for that is my book, Get Rich, Lucky Bitch. And so you can get that
I have it
from,
right here.
oh, hi, hello. And that you can get it on Audible, Kindle, paperback. You can order it from your library. You can ask your library to order it in for you. Most of them will do that. And I think that's a great place to start because it really introduces that conversation. Even people who are doing quite well, who don't think they have blocks, will sort of email me and say, oh, I didn't realize I've found this new nuance. And that's just part of it, right? That's the
That
journey
was
forever.
that was me. Thought I had a great money mindset. Had a conversation with somebody who kind of called me out quite badly, and then picked up your book. And
It doesn't mean you were bad. It just means there's always new
no, I
things
just
to
mean they
uncover,
were like
right?
they
Yeah,
properly called me out. No, I should have said quite rightly, but in a very I'm calling BS on you, and yeah, call me out in a very loving, caring way. Though in a very
yeah,
loving, caring way. It was a very safe space. But yeah,
good.
I was very much like, oh, okay, well, here's something that I never thought I was going to be looking into in 2024, 2025. But here I am. And as I say, when I picked up your book, the tracking of the money mantras, it did because I thought I did track money. I thought I did.
Yes, exactly. And it's really looking at true full abundance, right? And it's finding those little stories. I'd be curious, I know it's another sidebar, but when I started to look at why am I not allowed to be rich, one of the things that came up for me is because I have curly hair. And I wonder if you ever had that, because I always thought, Shirley Temple, I'm so cute.
Yeah.
Or I'm too short to be rich. So funny, some of those little stories that we have, we don't even realize we have. And
Well,
obviously
yeah,
you've got
it's so
curly hair, but
funny
like me.
the curly hair thing because it was always like, well, I'm not that girl. I'm not that type of girl that gets the big jobs, that gets the big things, that gets looked at because I had curly hair. And it really
Right.
made when there's a film and there's a program that kind of stand out for me. And it's actually really poignant because Robert Redford
Yeah.
passed away yesterday. But
Yeah.
I know the way we were with
Mm.
Barbara Streisand because it was like the Katie girl. I mean, she had the curly hair, she was like wild and free, but then they smoothed her hair and she got Robert Redford and then she went curly again. And then in
Yeah.
Sex and the City, when Carrie says, "Too big, your girl's lovely, Hubble," so referred to the way we were.
Yeah.
And she had the curly hair, and it was about the wildness and I don't need to be tamed and that. So absolutely, I do. It is a total sidebar, but there is a thing with the curly hair that you think because you're just
Barbara
not.
Streisand's book.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I totally understand what you're saying, but what I was just gonna say, Barbara Streisand's book that came out like a year or 2 ago, 2 years ago, unbelievable money lessons in that. And again, too, because she just was, I'm not pretty enough. I'm not allowed to be, successful. And we have so many stories in ourselves. And that's why I brought up the curly hair thing, because it's so funny. People think, I'm fine. And then there'll be one thing and you'll go, yes, that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Absolutely.
Wealthy
So there's
curly
one.
girls.
Yeah, well, that's it.
They go.
You can't, and I've always been curly. I've never straightened my hair, and people always used to ask me, kind of, why didn't I? And I was just kind of like, it's my hair. It never really occurred to me. And I'm so thankful as an adult that as a child, it never really occurred to me to do that. And also because it takes a lot of work, and I was never kind of that
It
girl
does.
either. So it does take
I've
a lot
kind
of
of
work.
lost my curls, so I'm in between now. So when I wash my hair yesterday, I've got the little curls, and if I go to the beach, I have them. But then it's all straight and fuzzy because I've obviously processed my hair too much. But I just want to leave everyone with one exercise that I think is really useful: is
Yeah.
look in the mirror every morning. You can write this on your mirror in whiteboard marker and put, "This is what a wealthy woman looks like." It does start to bring up your stuff, right? Because your voice will start to say, you'll go, no, 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 but I don't look like a wealthy woman. And if you're not a woman, you can say, this is what a wealthy non-binary person looks like. This is what, and the more that you can almost start to put those things on and say, this is what a wealthy curly haired woman looks like. This is what a wealthy black woman looks like. This is what a queer woman looks like. This is what a wealthy fat woman looks like. Whatever words that you feel like have been weaponized against you, it really does start to change things, because then when you can accept that, you'll have money and still look like a dog's breakfast in the morning sometimes, you'll go, it is going to be me. It isn't going to be some
It's still just
makeover. And
me.
then that's right. And it's really a powerful exercise to do. And it won't feel good for the first month. You'll have too many yeah buts, and then you'll start to go, yeah, because men don't have any problem with that. If you
No.
look at the 100 richest men, they're short. Some of them are good looking. Some of them are not. They're all wear different clothes. But I had this vision of my head of like, no, it has to look a certain way. And that's what stops us from doing it, because again, it's that permission piece. And if you've never seen anybody who looks like you and who is wealthy, then you can be the first, right?
Mhm.
And you can normalize that for other people. But you just give yourself permission. I can be wealthy at any weight, age, size, hair color, skin color, accent. I can be wealthy exactly the way I am. And the more that you can accept that, then you'll do the work
Absolutely.
to make the money. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sorry for the sidebars. Sorry on
Oh, no,
sidebars.
absolutely. I love the sidebar. I'm here for the sidebars. This might be your answer to the next question, but I'll ask it anyway because it's a question that I ask before anybody's allowed for me to stop the recording, and that is, what joy legacy would you like to leave behind?
Oh, yeah, I do think about this a bit because there's been different points in my career where I could really feel the two roads thing. Do you want to be famous? Do you not want to be famous? I face those crossroads all the time about, do I want to write another book? Do I want to do TV or whatever? And I just think I just want to be known for someone who, like, is an encourager in whatever way that looks. And I try and do that in my daily life. I try and do that at the ballet studio. I try and do it with my kids' friends. And yeah, I want to be known as that. And I love now that there are people in my life who don't know me from work and they see me as that, like that little kid that I was, who was just happy and creative and, full of joy of going, look at this thing that I made. And that's, yeah, I love that in my life. So I don't know what my career holds, how, if it expands or stays the same or it declines even more. But I want people to be inspired by the creativity that I bring to whatever I do. And I hope that it inspires them to do something similar in their own life.
That's lovely. That's
Yeah.
amazing. That is, and I think you already are. I think the fact that your books are out there and the success that you had with the Money Bootcamp and the transformations that you're taking people through, I think that is definitely something that is going to go for years and years. But I could talk to you for so much longer, but it is a podcast and I do need
You need to go to
Sorry.
bed too. It's very late there.
Yeah, I do. I've got little ones to get up for at whatever time in the morning. But thank you so much for coming on this podcast. I am so delighted that you did, and I've enjoyed every single minute of it.
Me too. Thank you for having me. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Just wow. What an incredible conversation with Denise. That was recorded late on a Wednesday night because of the time difference. And I was worried about my energy. Let's just say I didn't sleep for quite a few hours after we finished recording. And it was very tired eyes the next day, but a very, very happy podcast host. I hope that you're walking away as inspired as I am. As always, here are my 3 key takeaways from today's episode. Number 1, your money story isn't fixed. The beliefs you grew up with, perhaps some of the beliefs that you learned, they don't have to define the way you earn, spend, or thrive today. In fact, they could be the platform for you to change, for you to adapt, and for you to have wealth and abundance that person who had those beliefs could ever have dreamt. Number 2, that community and conversation matter. Talking about money. I know, how dare we, even as women, openly, without shame. It's one of the most powerful steps that you can take towards abundance. Number 3, and my personal favourite, joy and money are not opposites. You are allowed to have both. A business that feels good and one that pays you what you're worth. You are allowed to be of service and like nice things. You are allowed to be of service and want to help people and have great money goals and live an abundant life, whatever that abundance means for you. If this episode touched you, resonated with you, go and connect with Denise. Her links are in the show notes. And I would love you to subscribe, leave a review, share it with someone who needs this reminder today. It helps us get the Joy Work Show message out there, and you might just help somebody along the way too. Subscribe wherever you're watching, whether it's a little button or the alarm, whatever it is, takes 2 seconds and you're helping me. And remember, joy is not just a nice to have. It's your strategy, it's your fuel, it's your edge. I'll see you next time on the Joy Work Show.